This is News 3 Now this morning.
Good morning, everybody. It's Election Day, Tuesday, November 3rd, and it is sure to be an election day like none of us have ever seen.
Absolutely. So we are here to help you prepare. We want to make sure you know exactly what to expect today, tonight, and in the days ahead.
That starts with knowing what to expect when you get to the polls today. Chris and Leah, I just saw poll workers arriving here at the City County building within the last couple of minutes today. One of the things you're going to notice are the extra precautions for COVID-19 as you head into your polling place today. Polling places cannot legally require you to wear a mask to vote in person, but clerks across Dane County say they're urging everyone to wear one in order to make the experience as safe as possible. Precautions are not foolproof, but local health experts say they do work and that having your voice heard is worth the risk.
There's no way to make voting completely risk-free. At the same time, there are ways to reduce the risk to a significant degree, such that most medical experts would say if you can wear the mask, if you can socially distance, if you have the hand sanitizer and you can keep your hands free, the benefit of voting probably exceeds the risk.
There will also be plenty of sanitizer on hand, and voting stations will be sanitized after every use. Lines will be spaced out so everyone stays socially distant, which might mean wait times look longer than they actually are today. With so many people having already voted, though, most clerks don't expect wait times to be too bad. Now, if you do have COVID but need to vote in person today, the CDC says you can go vote, but you need to take the extra precautions. Once you arrive at your polling location, let a poll worker know your situation. Ask them if there is an alternative voting option like a designated polling booth or a curbside option. Poll workers assisting voters with symptoms should be wearing personal protective equipment as well. Meanwhile, in Rock County, they're expecting a record voter turnout there as well today. That's where we find News 3 Now's Taylor Lazenby this morning with the latest from there. Good morning, Taylor.
Good morning, Josh. That's right. We're here in Rock County, and Rock County consists of over 96,000 registered voters. Of those, over half have already registered by mail. Now, I spoke with Lisa Tolson. She's the county clerk, and she says more than 50,000 Rock County residents have voted absentee ballot both by mail and in person. That compares to about 19,500 absentee voters in the 2016 election. But Rock County coronavirus numbers have recently reached record highs. With President Trump, he visited Wisconsin 5 times in October, while Biden made his only October visit last Friday. Tolson says her staff is ready and equipped to handle any safety precautions to ensure a smooth voting process. But now the question stands if COVID-19 cases will play a part in the number of votes. Coming up in the next half hour, we're going to talk about some of the referendums that you can see on the ballot here in Rock County. Reporting live in Rock County, Taylor Lazenby, News 3 Now.
Thank you, Taylor. If it's been a while since you voted, your polling place may have changed, so you'll want to make sure to double check where you're supposed to vote today before you leave. You can do that by plugging in your address on the My Vote website. You'll also need to make sure that you have your photo ID with you, or you won't be allowed to vote. The address on your ID, though, does not have to match what's in the poll book, since they only use your photo ID to confirm your identity.
Now, if you're not already registered to vote but still want to cast a ballot today, you can register at the polls. If you're registering today, you'll need to bring some sort of proof of residency with you, along with your photo ID.
6:06, precincts have a lot of absentee ballots to tally, so results may be coming in later than usual.
We want to make sure you know what's next. Again, today, tomorrow, in the days to come. So UW-Madison political science professor Mike Wagner is joining us this morning to help us break it all down. Good morning, Mike. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
Doing all right. Thanks for joining us this morning. We are curious, what results, if any, do you expect to see tonight?
We'll see results coming in once the polls close. I don't think that we'll have everything when most people are still awake. I think a best case scenario in Wisconsin is to know who won maybe by 2 or 3 in the morning, but it could take longer than that to count the ballots because of the record early and absentee voting that we've already had.
Mike, would you be surprised at all if we know the winner of the presidential election overnight?
It's possible. It depends upon a couple of things. First, I think it depends upon Florida. They count their ballots relatively quickly, and they're an important swing state. If they go Joe Biden's way, it becomes very difficult to imagine President Trump's path to victory. If Florida goes Trump's way, then Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, both of which cannot start counting their ballots that were early and absentee until today, are going to matter. And those two states, ours and Pennsylvania, as well as a few others, are just going to be slower.
So what's the timeline for election results to be verified and certified, both here in Wisconsin and across the country?
It varies by state, and so the certification process can often take a month, and so that can last a while. All the votes ought to be counted within a few days, hopefully, unless there's some sort of unforeseen problem. So we should have a good sense of how all of the votes have been counted if we are able to be patient for a couple of days. The certification process takes longer.
Now, what if there are problems? How should the public react to any problems at the polls or any problem reporting any of the results?
I think the first thing to do is to remember that no candidate can claim victory and have that mean anything. So if President Trump or former Vice President Biden says, "I've won," that is a meaningless statement. It has nothing to do with who actually wins and who determines who actually wins. What matters is who is ahead in all of the states after all of the votes are counted and after those votes are certified. I think another thing for people to pay attention to is what sources who have a strong track record of calling elections in the past are saying. And so the Associated Press, for example, has already laid out how they're going to make calls. And so they've laid out their methodology already, regardless of who's winning. And so we can trust those kinds of organizations making calls because they've pre-registered what it is they're going to be doing.
All right, Mike Wagner, thanks for taking a couple of our questions right now. We're going to check back in with you in about 20 minutes. Hold tight. All right, 6:09 now. Our election team coverage continues after the break. When we return, we're going to tell you how local businesses are preparing for the outcome.
Plus, absentee ballots more popular this year because of the pandemic. When election officials can start counting and when they hope to be done. Stay with us.
Welcome back to our special Election Day coverage. Once you get through the voting line and into the booth, we want to make sure you know exactly what's on your ballot.
And at the top of your ballot, the race for president, of course, the two leading candidates, President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden.
But there are 8 congressional seats up for grabs in Wisconsin that you might also see on your ballot. One of them in our area, the 1st Congressional District. That race is between the incumbent Republican, Brian Stile, and Democrat Roger Polak. Then in the 2nd District, incumbent Democrat Mark Pocan. He's facing off against Republican Peter Theron. There are more than a dozen races for seats in the state assembly. 2 current members also hoping to move up to the state Senate. Republican Assembly member Joan Ballweg is running against Democrat Joni Anderson in the 14th, and Assembly member Melissa Sargent, a Democrat, running against Republican Scott Barker.
If you live in the Madison School District, you'll have a couple of referenda questions on your ballot asking for a total of $350 million. Funding would renovate the high schools, add an elementary school, and fund day-to-day operations. At channel3000.com, you'll find a link to a breakdown of the projects. There you can also find our detailed reports breaking everything down, including the tax impact to property owners. Tomorrow morning, Superintendent Dr. Carlton Jenkins will be on News 3 Now this morning to go over the results.
If you're voting in person today, polls open at 7 a.m. Clerks here in Madison want you to know that as long as you're in line by 8 tonight, your vote will be counted. Once polls close, a poll worker will stand at the end of the line to make sure everyone ahead of them is able to cast their ballot. From there, poll workers will double check to make sure every ballot has been counted. That includes making sure the absentee ballot delivery bag is empty.
Clerks here at the City County building will be able to begin counting those absentee ballots when the polls open here at 7 o'clock this morning. They're expecting a long day and night of feeding those ballots. Madison City Clerk says polling locations here may have anywhere between 300 and nearly 4,000 absentee ballots to process today. The aim is to have all of the absentee ballots at every polling location in Madison processed by the time polls close at 8 o'clock tonight. Results won't be reported, though, until poll workers triple check to make sure every absentee ballot was counted and totals match. Every hour throughout the day, they'll be checking to make sure the numbers on the tabulating machines match the poll book. If those numbers don't match, they'll make sure every absentee envelope was given a voter number and the envelope no longer has a ballot in it. Any discrepancies have to be figured out before results are reported to the clerk's office.
Clerks and election officials are stressing that any totals you might see tonight are unofficial. That's always been the case in every election, but clerks want to be sure that message is clear heading into an election this heated. All election results are preliminary until they're certified. Madison's Board of Canvassers will meet at 4 p.m. Friday to review all the Election Day paperwork and count any extra provisional ballots that were approved. The state of Wisconsin's deadline to certify their election results is December 1st.
Okay, 6:16 now. Hattie O is out on the patio on this balmy Election Day morning. Might have to shed the jacket later, Hattie.
All right, Hattie, thank you. Of course, this has been a very heated election season, but the Wisconsin elections officials want to make sure that nobody feels threatened if they're going to the polls to cast their vote in person today. It is illegal to intimidate someone who is going to vote, and a federal crime to intimidate, threaten, or coerce someone with the purpose of interfering with their vote. If you feel like you're experiencing voter intimidation, the American Civil Liberties Union says you should report it immediately to your local election officials or call the Election Protection Hotline. That number is 1-866-OUR-VOTE. It is legal, however, for someone to be an election observer in the state of Wisconsin. The election commissioner will let someone vote at polling places or where absentee ballots are counted. If you wish to observe the election, you must notify the chief election inspector at that polling location, provide photo ID, and a face covering is required. Observers are not allowed to use their phones or a camera, talk to people who are coming in to vote, or wear anything that promotes a candidate. Because of the pandemic, the number of observers allowed in polling locations may also be limited this year. In Madison, you may see groups of people wearing yellow shirts around your polling place. They are likely election defenders with Freedom Inc. They say they will be prepared to help de-escalate any situation that could act as voter suppression or voter intimidation tactics. They plan to have about 4 people working at upwards of 30 polling locations.
Every vote should count, and every voter wants to make sure theirs does. Well, Wisconsin has a system in place to ensure this, which will be even more important given all the early voting that happened this year. If you've already turned in your ballot through the mail, a drop box, or in person, you cannot vote in person today. If you try, poll workers will ask you if you've already returned, not just requested, an absentee ballot.
If later in the day they come across your absentee ballot, that ballot would be rejected. But then after Election Day, that absentee envelope, a copy of the page of the poll book would also be forwarded on to the district attorney for investigation.
You could then be charged with felony election fraud. If you're convicted, you could face a $10,000 fine, 3.5 years in prison, or both. This applies even if you aren't sure the clerk got your ballot back.
None of us know what's going to happen with today's election, and that uncertainty is part of the reason most businesses in the State Street area have boarded up their windows again. According to Madison's Central Business Improvement District, about 70% of businesses had taken down their boards. It's now at 80 to 90% of businesses that have put them back up, partly in anticipation of Halloween, but also because of the unease surrounding the election.
That's the hardest part for our small businesses right now, is the unknown about what comes next. No matter what election result we see, there may be unrest downtown. There may be celebration downtown.
She hopes these precautionary measures end up being unnecessary. Well, the time right now is 6:20. Our team coverage of Election Day continues into the next half hour. We're looking at how candidates need the election map to look if they want to win Wisconsin.
And we are continuing our conversation with UW-Madison political science professor Mike Wagner, discussing the election and why there might not be results tonight. Maybe when we could see them. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. If you need a way to get to your polling place, there are a number of ways to get there for free.
That's right. Here in Madison, Union Cab, the Urban League, and the African American Council of Churches are among those offering up some free rides. There are also reduced rates for Uber and Lyft today. We have a list of all those options and how you can get in contact with those sources at channel3000.com.
2 local women are also working to make sure that everyone can get to the polls. Laura Regine Kajorli is president of Stony Ridge RV Rentals. She posted on social media that if anyone needs a ride, she would offer a 14-passenger bus. That's when Jalatifah Joe Myers responded, saying she needed rides for people who are currently homeless.
I think that we need to show marginalized populations people that are often their voices are not at the table, that their voices matter too. And this is an opportunity to give them the resources to make sure that their voices count.
The women say they will be transporting 38 people to the polls to vote today. A valiant effort from those women.
The entire News 3 Now team is going to be working to bring you live local coverage throughout the day. Starting at 6:30 this evening, we'll be streaming local content nonstop at channel3000.com. Also on our streaming app, which is Channel 3000 Plus. Just head to channel3000.com/apps to find your connection to our coverage. Again, that's channel3000.com/apps.